Welcome back to the channel. I am starting a new series. My goal is to help new boaters understand the yachting lifestyle. I'm going to be breaking down different styles of yachts, the different models, and what each of their use case scenario is, and to try to help you make the right decision and give you a good foundation of knowledge as you go forward into your boat buying experience. I figure there's no better place to start this series than with the Express Cruiser. The best way to break it down is going to be into three different size categories, starting with a pocket cruiser, mid-size cruiser, and into the luxury cruisers. Starting out with the pocket cruisers, this is obviously going to be the smallest of the three. Think 20 to 28 feet and a beam, which is the width of the boat, under 9.5 feet, meaning you can load it onto a trailer and pull it behind a pickup truck. I will link a couple of different examples down in the description, and here's a card that you can click on now and watch a tour if you would like. One of the major benefits of a boat this size is, as the name suggests, it's a pocket cruiser. You can load it onto the trailer, take it anywhere. Storage is not going to be an issue. If you want to leave it on the trailer in front of your house, you can do that. If you want to put it in a storage facility and one of those, quick storage places, you can do that. If you want to put it in a sling, if you want to put it in dry dock, if you want to leave it in the water year round, you can do all of that. So if storage is one of your main concerns, then I would heavily consider looking at a pocket cruiser. Another reason you might go with a pocket cruiser over a bow rider, center console, dual console, any of the other boats in this size is because you get all of the amenities that you do in a full-size yacht in a pocket cruiser. You're going to get a V-berth. Some of them have mid cabins, which is a little bed in the back. You're going to have a full head with a holding tank, freshwater tank, a galley. You'll still be able to pull your kids in a tube behind it without sending them into the stratosphere with some massive wake that you get on bigger boats. And the number one reason I recommend a pocket cruiser over any of the other boats in this size category is because you can get them with a generator, which means you can have air conditioning and you have a place for your wife and your kids or your family to retreat into the air conditioning on those hot summer days while the captain's out driving the boat. Now, the cons to a boat this size are the obvious ones. It's going to be a smaller boat, which means you're going to be sticking to smaller bodies of water. You're not really going to feel comfortable taking this boat out 20 miles offshore, 30 miles offshore. I know some of you adventurous type will still do it. I'm not saying you can't do it, but this is a beginner's guide, so keep that in mind. The other obvious con is with a narrow beam, it's going to make the boat feel less stable in rougher waters, and you're not going to have as much room to get up and move around. A lot of boats this size, you're kind of squeezing past each other, and I'm sure you get it. Make sure you get on a few if you are considering this. Get on a few with whoever you're going to be bringing on the boat, or however many people you think you're going to be bringing on the boat, to get a good idea if this is going to be the right size for you. Moving on to the mid-size cruiser, I would say this is the size range where most people are going to gravitate towards because it's just big enough to where you can have your family on it for the weekend. You will have plenty of room to move around where you're not squeezing past each other. You can bring your family on weekend trips if you want to go down the coast, spend the weekend somewhere. If you want to go out on the lake, spend the weekend on the lake. These are going to be just big enough to do that, and they're not going to be so big where you're not comfortable crewing it by yourself. I would say the size range cutoff for these are about 30 feet to 42-ish feet, although 42 feet can feel pretty big. So the cutoff here is a little bit more subjective, but overall, they're all going to stay between a 10.5 to a 13.5 foot beam, and almost all of them are going to be dual motor. That's when you're going to know you're moving into the mid-size cruiser. Again, I will leave some links in the description to examples that we have on this channel, and I'll also leave a card up here so you can just click it real quick if you don't want to scroll through the description. In most mid-size cruisers, you're going to get a full V-berth bed and some way to give you some sort of privacy. Some of them have curtains, some of them have pocket doors, and some of them just have straight up doors that you can close, providing a little bit of extra privacy for those weekend trips. They will also almost all have some sort of mid-cabin berth, so in the very back of the cabin, it's going to be a little cutout with some sort of seating arrangement that can transfer into a bed, and they almost all have a dinette straight across from the galley. Now that might be switched from one side to the other, but generally you're going to have your galley on your port side and a dinette that can sometimes turn into an extra berth on the starboard side. Another little tidbit of information here, really just kind of extra, is keep in mind on boats this size, especially underneath 40 feet, you're still almost universally going to be looking at a wet head, which means you're going to be taking the faucet from the sink and using that to shower with the toilet and everything else in the head right there with you, getting it all wet. It's not until you get to above 40 feet, maybe 42-ish feet, where you start to see a full separate shower. But that is something to keep in mind, especially if you're planning on doing some cruising. Maybe it's your first boat, but you really want to go on long trips, or you think you're going to be spending a lot of time on the boat. Just a little bit of quick info for you to keep in mind. The biggest drawback to a boat this size is definitely going to be the storage. Unlike the pocket cruiser, your storage options are going to be much more limited. The boat is almost universally going to be stored at a marina or in a slip, and it's going to stay in the water most of the time. Depending on where you're at, that means the boat's going to have to be stored out of the water on the hard somewhere during the winter months, or if you're anywhere like I am, then the boat stays in the water year round. And this is going to add a more routine maintenance schedule that you're going to have to stick to. In summary, I will wrap this section up by saying, these mid-sized cruisers make the ideal first yacht for somebody trying out the lifestyle and seeing if they really want to get into it. People who end up staying in the hobby will find that they tend to outgrow these boats pretty quickly and will be looking to upgrade in a couple of years or so. But you will have learned a ton, and you will have gained a ton of confidence in your abilities, and you will have figured out what you like and what you don't like, and things that you're going to be looking for in your next boat, which is going to be bigger and more expensive. Moving on to our third and final size category, this is going to be the large cruiser or the luxury cruiser. Think anything over 45 feet, and they kind of max out around 65 feet because you're really not going to be crewing anything with just your family over 65 feet. You're starting to move into the super yacht status, probably going to need some crewmates to really take the boat out. That's not really what beginners are looking for. So I do know those owners are out there. I do know those buyers are out there. But if that's you, maybe we'll do another video on that some other time. The benefits and drawbacks of a boat this size are going to be pretty obvious. The bigger the boat, the more room you're going to have, the longer you can stay on it, the more staterooms you're going to have, the more privacy it offers. Bigger the water you're going to feel comfortable taking it out in. They're obviously not going to have wet heads. You'll have multiple heads and multiple showers typically. Something to keep in mind when shopping for boats this size is, although I'm a firm believer you cannot buy too big, you do have to be realistic about what your capabilities are going to be to crew the boat, or if you're going to be using your family or your spouse as crew, what they are capable of managing. And another pro tip, you do pay for everything in boating by the foot. Slips, bottom jobs, surveys, all of it is by the foot. Again, I have left some links to some luxury cruisers in the description down below that we've toured on this channel, and I've left a card up here to click on the most popular luxury cruiser that we've toured. The last thing I will say about these is, for most people, I think that the 45 to 48 foot range is going to be the ideal size, where you're going to feel like the boat is really big and it's going to give you that big yacht feel, but it's not going to feel like such a chore to take out for the weekend or take out for the evening. Now that we've gone over sizes, there's one more way to break down express cruisers, and that's going to be by drive type. The three that I'm going to spend the most time talking about are the most common, especially in express cruisers, and that's going to be the direct drive, the stern drive, and the V drive. We're not going to spend so much time talking about pod drives because from what I've heard, they're not going to be a great beginner's choice. They are complicated, they're expensive to work on, they're not very forgiving when learning waterways. If you hit something or you run aground, those pod drives will rip right off, and it's going to be a maintenance nightmare. Although I will say there are people who love pod drives. They do offer some amazing benefits. The maneuverability that you get from them is unmatched, but this is a beginner's guide. So the fifth and final option here is going to be outboard motors, which is a completely different system, and you're really only going to see those on express cruisers on a lot of the newer stuff. The first one we're going to talk about today is the direct drive. These are the most easily identifiable of the three types of drives that we're going to talk about because one, the engine is facing aft, and two, they must be placed midship. In the direct drive, a drive shaft is going to go straight out the back to your prop, steered by a rudder. These are the most simple design and offer what many people consider to be a more comfortable ride. Because the engines are placed midship, you get a lot less bow rise as you're getting up onto a plane. The downside to these are, because of the engine placement, you're going to lose out on cabin space and you are going to lose that midship berth altogether. Moving on to V drives, these are still going to be prop and rudder boats, but the engine is going to be placed in the back of the boat facing forward, and they run to a gearbox which redirects the drives back aft. These are the most common of the three in my neck of the woods, at least. In most coastal waters, you're going to be getting a lot of V drives. Freshwater, you're probably looking at more IOs, inboard, outboard, stern drives. We'll get there. So if you are out there shopping, or you're watching videos online, or you're looking at ads online and it doesn't mention what kind of drive it is, engine placement is really going to help you narrow it down between a direct drive or a stern drive or V drive. and I'll break down how to tell the difference between those two if nobody tells you. Last but not least is the stern drive, or the IO drive, otherwise known as inboard-outboard. But on the back of the boat, mounted on the transom, is going to be your out drive. I'll see if I can put some footage or a photo up on the screen now so you know what I'm talking about. There are a few ways to identify a stern drive without having to pull it out of the water, but the number one way to tell is if there are tilt and trim controls up at the helm. That's going to indicate to you that it is a stern drive, as you do have to control the tilt and trim on a stern drive, which gives you a little bit of extra control. It allows you to run the boat in some more shallow water. I know they are preferred in lakes and freshwater. They do offer better performance, but you are sacrificing some maneuverability there, as the out drives are going to be placed closer together. And so now that we've broken down the three drive types, I do have to say you can find all three drive types in gas or diesel. Unless you're looking at pocket cruisers, then you're pretty much sticking to gas. The last thing I'll say about gas engines is the last thing to really consider when searching. There are two types of gas engines, really. I mean, we can break it down further, but for the sake of simplicity, there are two types of engines when looking at gas engines, and that is going to be closed-cooled or open-cooled. So open-cooled means you are going to be running raw water through your engine block, which means at the end of the day, especially if you're running in salt water, you're going to want to hook up the hose and you're going to want to flush those engines out and get all of that salt water out of there. They obviously are less preferable than the second option, which is closed-cooled, which means you are running a heat exchanger and coolant through, so the only salt water is running through your exhaust manifolds. You'll still need to wash those out, or you still should wash those out at the end of a day or weekend. But obviously the closed-cooled is going to be the more preferable option, and it's not too complicated or too expensive to take an open-cooled system and turn it into a closed-cooled system. Those are the last two ways I would break down engines, and something to keep in mind while you're searching for a boat. And know, if you do have an open-cooled system, it is imperative that you rinse those motors out after you're done using them, especially in saltwater, brackish water, coastal water. You really want to make sure you're doing that. All right, I think that's going to do it for our beginner's guide to express cruisers. I think they make the perfect first yacht. Let me know in the comments, I'm sure you will, what I got wrong or what I left out or what you would like more info on, and I can see about making more videos like this in the future. Let me know in the comments if you want to continue this series and which model you would like to see next. If you made it this far, hit the subscribe button. It really helps me out. Consider becoming a channel member. It's $5 a month. You get early access to all the videos, and you get a little bit more direct access to me where you can ask all your questions, and we can have some conversations about things that you otherwise can't if you are not a member. Thank you, and I will see you in the next one.